Welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 96. Hello, and welcome back to the Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson, and I'm here with Julian Pombo. How's it going? We have a special guest today. We've mentioned his name on virtually every episode because he's just a wonderful boy. He is the man, the myth, the legend Italian from the lake. Dario, what's your middle name?
It can be anything you want it to be.
Dario John Palazzo.
Carlos,
yeah.
I'll go for Carlos.
Paisano.
Carlos Santana Palazzo.
Yes, welcome on. We've mentioned you a few times. Dario plays guitar in Erisca, along with me and Julian.
And it's a fun job to have.
It is. He's. I mentioned that he's the man of the lake. As it happens, we are recording this second week in September. A year ago right now, Dario almost drowned in a lake while we were on tour with Erisca in Switzerland. Interesting story.
That wasn't a fun experience. That not a fun part of the job.
It was quite funny because I was standing on the shore, just looking on, and the three boys of the band decided to swim out to a platform. And me, who can't swim, thought, I'm just going to stay on the shore and just soak in the sun. That'll be fine. And those three head out to this massive platform. And I just hear a sort of splashing commotion. I think, they're just fooling around and stuff. Scott being Scott. And little did I know that Dario was struggling for his life. I had no idea.
It was a pretty sketchy experience, but
He's alive and breathing, although his Ray-Bans are at the bottom of a lake somewhere.
Just some Swiss seagulls jumping about with them.
Some very designer seagull. Anyway, we're not talking about seagulls today.
Or near-death experiences.
We are on what is this? This is part 3. So we're recording this. Recording part 3 after part 4. Because that's how we do things here. So we've done part 1 was drums, we've done bass, and now we're doing guitar. So we thought we'd bring in somewhat of a guitarist expert, someone who actually knows stuff about guitars.
Rather than me sort of sitting about going, it's kind of like bass.
Two extra strings.
Yeah.
I never use them. No.
Yeah, it's basically just a bass guitar, but you strummy it instead of plucky it. Anyway, episode over. Thanks for listening. So the reason we brought in Dario is because 2 reasons. He's a fantastic guitarist, and he also works in a music shop and sells guitars for a living, which helps. So he knows a fair amount about not just guitars, but amps, pedals, everything, and the best deals that you can get and what have you. So we'll start off like we've done in the last 2 episodes. So on the last 2 episodes, we talked about choosing a particular instrument and like what kind of thing to look for depending on what you're playing. So I know for Erisca you use acoustics as well as electrics, and we'll maybe start with acoustics because there's quite a lot of people like just go for that anyway. But this is something I genuinely don't know. So depending on what style of music you're playing, there are different types of acoustics you can get for different genres. So I know like folk musicians prefer a certain brand, whereas like singer-songwriters or country folk prefer another brand, and then you've got rocky guys who play in bands who play different brands. What is it you've got currently? Acoustic?
I have a Faith. Basically, it's kind of Faith Dreadnought. But I've had plenty. I mean, you guys have seen them. I've had Martin's, a brand Finlayson, kind of varying sizes, because it's not, to me, genre kind of dictates a body shape or size
Right.
rather than a brand. But
Right.
a lot of kind of brands are kind of synonymous for certain guitars, obviously. But you're saying, yeah, it totally depends what you're playing. For for the folk guys, a lot of that leans, or what I've noticed, leans towards like kind of dreadnought, bigger body size.
So
'cause that really,
what's all the different sizes from like small to large? Because I never remember the names personally.
you're testing me as well. But smallest one, I would say going for like kind of parlour size, which is like, you see the easiest way to explain it is like you look at guitars from like the 40s or something like that, and 9 times out of 10 you see a picture of someone with a parlour guitar. Up from that, you've got like a kind of Martin Triple O kind of size, which is like the kind of thinner body, almost like kind of curvier sides to it. Again, up and in size from a parlour, and then goes on and on from there up to dreadnought, jumbo. Grand Concert comes in there at one point as well. But yeah, it does. They do make a massive difference. I used to lean more towards a Triple O kind of size because it's to me, it's a good all rounder.
Yeah.
But when you start kind of doing more of the strummy stuff, you find it can be a bit restricted in terms of the sound. So that's where your bigger bodies and all that kind of stuff come in.
Jumbos and stuff.
Yeah.
Aye. Because I always tell a story. I was recording a band, and they were doing an acoustic track on top of, so like doing some acoustic guitar on top of the stuff that was already down, like loads of electric guitars and stuff. And the lead guitarist came in with a $2,000 Taylor, this like little Taylor. It was a smaller body one. Sounded great, mic'd it all up. Sounded just unbelievable, amazing, sparkly, just loved it. Recorded it, played it along with the song, and it was dreadful. Just couldn't hear anything. It was just so weak and thin. And the other guitarist had a £300 Epiphone Jumbo without the cutaway, just a big, massive one. Hooked it up, and it just cut through just better than anything else. And that was 2 guitars, one's 300, one's $2,000. And it was night and day. Like I would pick the £300 one any day of the week. So it kind of depends on your application. So the Taylor might sound nice as a little singer-songwriter, just acoustic guitar and vocals. It would probably work really nice. But sometimes if you're playing with a band, maybe a bigger bodied guitar might suit you better. Plus, it depends on the size of you. Because Julian, you were saying a couple of weeks ago that like long neck bass guitars are good, but if you're a small guy or a small girl,
you might. I mean, you might be able to cope, but you'll struggle because it like the fret spacing gets bigger as well. You know, so there's that to take into consideration. Whereas the shorter the instrument becomes, obviously the smaller the fret spacing is, so it becomes a little easier to play. So yeah, there's that to take into consideration. But it's not impossible. There's a guy called like a country singer called like Little Jimmy Dickens or something like that, and it's hilarious because the guy is like 4 foot something, and he plays like a ginormous like Gibson Hummingbird. Like just it looks hilarious. I need to send you a picture. But it honestly is the funniest thing ever.
It's like that guy.
But
That
it's
plays.
totally
So
like,
you can't make it work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right. It depends on the size of it and everything like that. Obviously, with guitar, it is more body size than anything. But even if that's the sound you're after, you get folk that deal with it. I mean, you look at like Katie Tunstall, Amy McDonald. They're tiny, but you see them playing big, massive dreadnoughts because that's the sound they want. And that's what's comfortable for them. So it totally depends. You've got to try a range of stuff to find what you settle with. And again, it's always good having a couple in your arsenal to kind of mix and match between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about tone woods? So what is there, like, I don't actually know. Like, what's the sort of typical materials that you would use?
if it's like typical, or the most common you kind of get is probably a solid spruce tops, and mahogany backing sides.
Right.
They're a good mix, because naturally kind of mahogany is a wee bit darker sounding and spruce is brighter. So mash them both together, you get a nice round sound. But
I've actually got a guitar that's exactly that. It's mahogany backing sides and a solid spruce top. It's a classical guitar.
Oh, okay.
And 100%, it's really good. It works great.
It's exactly the same as that. Like I said, I've got a Faith somewhere behind me, and that's exactly the same thing. Spruce top, mahogany back and sides.
Yeah,
and it totally changes. You can get guitars that are all mahogany, which sound really nice. Again, totally depends what you're after. Because if I'm playing a big kind of strummy, open chord kind of thing, you want the brightness and the clarity there. So that's where that kind of leans towards a certain sound which screams like spruce to me. Kind of mellow or finger picking stuff. Small body mahogany guitar nails that. But yeah, it totally changes. There's loads of different ones out there just now. There's folk making guitars out of Koa, which is a lovely looking bit of wood, and sounds magic as well. It's kind of a nice in between of mahogany and spruce to me. I could be totally wrong. I'm not an expert on tone woods, but that's what it kind of sounds like to my ear.
Because that's what we were talking about in the last bass episode. Obviously, basses being generally electric instruments. I was like, tone woods on an electric instrument generally, I think we both agree on this. I don't think it matters that much, but it definitely matters more when you've got an acoustic instrument and the whole thing is vibrating, rather than just a magnetic, pole like picking up,
So
string vibration.
See the pickup on an acoustic. So you get the pickup, and you also get like inbuilt mics and stuff, preamps and all that. So am I right in saying that if it's a pickup, the tone wood will make virtually no difference, but if there's mics, it probably will make a difference?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because usually if it's an undersaddle pickup, or a piezo, whatever way you want to say it, it's under the saddle. It's kind of just picking up the higher frequencies of the back of the string. Again, if you'll hear the noise if you plug straight into a DI box, or anything like that, or an amp without tweaking with anything, you get this really bright, brash sound from it. That's just the sound of the pickup and under the saddle. To me, it doesn't make wood could make no difference there. It all comes down to what how you're mixing it, or what you're putting into the hands of the sound engineer, basically. Because that's where the job kind of evolves from there. If you've got a mic, it's picking up the sound of the inside of the guitar. So whatever that guitar is made of, that's going to help with that, and it's going to pick up the sound of the construction of it, basically, as well. So it will make a difference with a mic, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, because it's actually picking up the body sound.
Yep.
Right. We'll move on to your favourite topic, the electric. So
electric guitars,
yeah. So there's some household brands that people always say, and there's misconceptions about a certain brand in particular that maybe used to be good and isn't good anymore, and there's a certain snobbery about it. You know what I'm talking about.
I can guess a couple.
So when you're choosing an electric guitar, what kind of things go through your head when you're like browsing? You're like, right, what kind of thing are you after?
It's a tough one, because I've got a couple of electric guitars that all do different jobs.
Yeah.
So it depends what I'm looking for. There's ones you can get that are good all-rounders. To me, that comes in the kind of classic T-style guitar, sort of Telecaster. If I'm going to a shop and trying something like that, it's a tough one, because you kind of want it's hard to go wrong with a Telecaster, but a lot of it comes to how it's set up as well. So if I'm looking for something that I want it to be set up well, which in a shop, kind of the way they're sent in, they're always set up with either 9s or 10 gauge strings, which makes a hell of a difference, depending what you're after, obviously. But yeah, what I'd look for in it, decent build quality. You want to kind of look for key parts of it that are going to hold together, basically. So I always kind of look at what's happening down at the bridge, because that's a contact point of the strings. If there's nonsense going on there, address that, basically. You got to look at how this is all on the outside. So picking a guitar up off the shelf, seeing what it's all about. Next part is plugging it in. Kind of make sure it sounds how you want it to sound. There's obviously a massive difference between different pickups and all that kind of stuff with electric guitars, humbuckers, single coils, kind of P90 things, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you kind of got to go in with a certain thing in mind. You got to know what you're looking at. Yep. Basically. Totally roundabout way from the question there, I think. But
does more pickups mean it's better? Because it tends to be. No, I know. Yeah, I mean, like just thinking of like the most stupid questions I could think of, because that's probably something that's probably gone through somebody's head. Oh, this has got like 5 pickups on it. Like, I mean, I've never seen a guitar with 5 pickups, or I don't even think it would be that useful. But you know, it definitely sometimes does make like a bit of a, I don't know, an impact, or somebody's thought about it. So there you go. There's the answer. It's no, because it's kind of the same on bass as well. It's like my best, like the most reliable, like best bass of all time, literally has 1 pickup.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like the simplest design ever. And you know,
9 times out of 10,
most all-round guitar, your Telecaster just has 2.
Yeah, Telecaster's got 2, 3. Well, unless you have fancy wiring and all that kind of stuff, you've got 3 positions. It's as simple as it can be.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, you only ever use 2 of them. So you either use the bridge or the neck, and that's it. But yeah, it depends what you're doing. If you're coming in like looking for a guitar as like a first-time buyer or something like that, or looking as for a guitar when you've been playing for a few years, it's 2 different mindsets, really. But yeah, I'd still tend to go, if I was a beginner going in for something, don't look for the flashiest guitar.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folk go for there's a big sparkly one that has all the stuff on it. Go for the simplest possible version of what you can get. I would say, because then there's less fussing about, and you can figure out from that what you want. So again, that comes in at 9 times out of 10, Stratocaster, Telecaster.
Yep.
It's going to be between those 2, because they're.
What about? No, sorry, I talked over you. I didn't mean to.
No, sorry.
Just finish the thought.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what everyone sees, because they're the kind of classic guitars that you see a lot of folk using. So if you're a beginner going in for that kind of thing, 100%.
Squire.
Start on that. If you've been playing for a few years, kind of think about what you want and what you need before you go in anywhere to get a guitar.
I've seen some folk come in with Squires, and they're honestly like, I've got an American standard Strat, and there's virtually nothing in it. Some folk come in with Squire Strats, which are like half the price, and honestly, they're just as good. There's no much in it at all. There's only like there's some build quality stuff, like with the machine heads and stuff are slightly different, and it'll maybe not stay in tune the same as that one does. Maybe it's not set up correctly, but like for the money, it's absolutely like it's a no-brainer.
A lot of it's set up, because you can get a guitar. I mean, we've all probably been there, bought a guitar at like 150 quid or something like that.
Yeah.
That rivals stuff at whatever price. Some of it could be like just because it's comfortable to you. I mean, I've got I keep saying Telecaster.
Yeah,
I've got one, and I wouldn't give that up for any guitar really.
That's your Desert Island guitar.
Yeah, because it works. It stays in tune. It's set up right. I got it for £400. Second hand. And again, I would put it up against any guitar off a shelf. And I'd probably still pick it up.
It's like your Harley Benton P bass. Of course, the P bass it's a Fender brand, but the Harley Benton's a copy. Your Harley Benton P bass was only £90, and what's the like official American Fender precision bass? How much is that?
Let me look it up.
It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
It's more than that. American.
You're probably starting at £1,000.
Yeah.
Aye. American standard P bass. About 1,140 quid. Right. I'm sure it's like an awesome guitar, but and that's like your plain Jane Fender P bass, vanilla. Like sunburst finish, like the most vanilla P bass you could think of. And I, for basically 1/10. Yeah, 1/10? Yeah, 1/10 of the price. I'm trying to think. I can't do the math. Thank you. I got a bass which is probably just as good. But yeah, there is definitely a build quality thing. Like there's things that I would maybe replace later on. Machine heads. What you call it? A nicer bridge, things like that. But that's all in the future,
Yeah.
Just standard, that bass is absolutely fine. So yeah, that's basically kind of what I was saying last time. I suppose you're kind of echoing that, is that just try stuff out, and you don't have to go for the fanciest, most expensive.
The biggest gripe I have with guitars is the tuning side. See if your guitar can't stay in tune, it's a useless guitar. See if it's a $2,000 guitar and it can't stay in tune, it's useless. To me anyway, as a sound engineer, if I'm having to tune the guitar between every single take, it's just like, no. Like 9 times out of 10, I'll just hand over my Strat because I know it stays in tune for longer than 5 minutes. It's I don't care that it's a rare Jaguar from the 1990s or something, if it can't stay in tune. And that brings us on to setup. So we'll incorporate strings in this as well. So
yes,
when you're choosing your strings and your setup and all that, what do you recommend? Because when I first started playing electric, just casually, I don't play proper, I started with 9s. Just because I was learning and I was trying to break my fingers in and all that. I've moved up to 11s, I think it's 11s is on that now. But at first I tried 11s and just my fingers were aching. So once you've got past that, what's the benefit of having a heavier gauge string?
For me, it's a feel thing more than anything. You don't. The tone does change. Drastically, I don't think so. It does change. You get a kind of rounder sound to me with it, just having that kind of extra beef behind the string, essentially. But there's nothing to say like there's a benefit between 9s and 11s or whatever, other than the feel for the player. Because for me, I'm used to playing 11s now. That's what I set up all my guitars with. They're all set up with 11s.
Wow.
And going down from that now, it just feels weird.
Yeah.
So it's less of a benefit to the guitar, I'd say, and more of a benefit to how you feel and how you play it.
Okay. I thought it was more of a tone thing for guitarists.
It does make 100% does make a difference to the tone, but again, for me, it is more feel than I like the sound of that better. With acoustics, it changes sound because, again, I went kind of down. I I think I went as high as 14s on an acoustic before.
Well, it's like electric pylon cables.
Oh, pretty much. For doing kind of finger picking stuff and kind of single note things, they sound magic.
Yeah.
You strum a big open chord with that, it sounds too stereo, and it's just kind of choking it to me.
Yep.
Because the string's not moving as much.
Right.
At least that's what it feels like to me. I don't know the science behind it or whatever, but if I've got obviously thicker strings on there and batter a open G chord or whatever, there's resistance. Stick a set of 12s on it, batter that open G chord as well, and it rings out.
Yep.
But again, all depends on setup of the guitar and all that. It's all opinion based with that kind of stuff, and it's got to be personal preference as well. Best thing I can say about strings is try tons, find what's right. Because someone will say, "Oh, but Stevie Ray Vaughan played 13s on his Strat." Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
but Stevie Ray Vaughan also probably had stronger fingers and a better setup on his guitar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all personal preference, all that kind of stuff. You can't.
Yeah, totally.
I would never say to someone, "You've got to play 11s because that's better for you." It's not. It's got to be what you think. I do believe certain guitars feel better with certain strings on them, but someone else might not think the same. It's totally up to the person that's playing it.
I had once a guy come in with a 12-string acoustic, and he had, I think it was like 12s on it. And I thought, oh, this is going to sound great. It's big body, jumbo body, 12-string. I thought this is going to sound beautiful. Really nice guitar. And set up all the mics, and he's playing away. And I'm like, it's really quiet. I don't know why. Like, just turning everything. I'm like, they're 12s. They should be ringing really loud. And then I went into the room, and he's playing away. And I'm like, oh, God, it is really quiet in here. I was like, it's quite a quiet guitar, that. What's the wood? And he's like, oh, I'm not really sure, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out he was playing a pick that was about the width of a piece of paper. It was the thinnest pick I've ever seen in my life. And it just wasn't vibrating the guitar. It just was not resonating at all. Changed the pick to a sort of normal, thicker pick. And it was like, whoa, this volume came out of nowhere. All the hiss goes away because I'd have to turn my mics down. So the pick can make a huge impact as well, depending on what kind of. So I always forget. Are you a more heavy pick or light pick kind of person?
Changes between what I'm playing again. Electric guitar, I'm kind of on the heavier side, probably at least 1 mil upwards. Probably settling about. I've got a couple here. What's that? That's 1.25 mil. Kind of just standard plectrum, basically, and then acoustic wise, it's more like kind of 0.8 mil downwards probably, because for me, or again, depends what you're playing. If I'm playing like kind of open chords or that kind of stuff, and you want the easiest strumming kind of pattern, go for a thinner pick. That's generally what I tend to go for that kind of thing. If I'm doing more single string picking stuff, again, I want it to be a little bit thicker, because I feel like it just passes through the strings easier. Again, trial and error with that stuff. You got to find what works for you. Because again,
I should have mentioned it. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, you'll know with bass as well. Like, you can use a pick with bass, and that all makes the difference too. Materials.
Yeah, it does make a difference. But I was going to say is that you don't really have much of an option when it comes to picking picks for bass.
Yeah.
It's just as thick as as thick as possible. Obviously not like I've got my favorite one to use personally is like I use a Jazz 3 quite a lot.
Yeah.
Just different sizes, but I find that works best because it's because it's got the nice pointy tip, and it's kind of, you get a similar kind of attack as if you were to play with a super thick fingernail. So don't buy bass picks because they're probably a scam. Just guitar picks are fine.
It's just a guitar pick, but at 2mm. That's
yeah, exactly. Just get a 2mm guitar pick.
Yeah, you can fall down a rabbit hole with all that stuff as well. I have been there and crawled back out of it, thankfully. But yeah, you can get picks that are ridiculous amount of money.
Yep.
I think the most I ever spent on one was about £12. Absolutely fantastic.
That's more than a pair of sticks.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, fantastic plectrum, sounded brilliant, felt brilliant, but the time that you're on stage and it falls out your hand and you can't find it again, you've got to think about, wait, I've just kind of thrown away 12 quid there.
Yeah, dude, that's kind of a similar thing happened to me. I might get some again because they were actually awesome. I used to have like picks made out of bone, but they were for it was for like gypsy jazz guitar playing. That's what they were for. So it was like the big, like triangular ones. It was so good for playing bass. It was great. But then, yeah, one day I dropped it and it just disappeared. Got eaten up by the pick void.
Yeah.
It's a soul destroying moment, but that's why I went back. I think I bought a pack of like 100 Dario picks, and that's it. I think I got the full pack of 100 for like 10 quid or something like that. And I'm still probably using the same 3 from that packet.
Yeah. So, guitar setup. This is something that you need to tell your fellow guitarists to actually do. Believe it or not, people, public service announcement, you actually need to set your guitar up before you play it.
Yeah.
The amount of people that just don't.
Yeah, 100% do. But you need to be savvy about it as well. Like, there's no point. It's like buying a car and not knowing how to change the oil or check the oil, rather.
Do cars run on oil? I thought they ran on petrol. You learn something every day. Cars have batteries? What?
Nah.
No, they don't. They run on fuel, not batteries, unless it's a Tesla.
But it's one of those that you've got to know what to do with it. You get a guitar, depends what shop you go to. The shop I work in, we set up everything before it leaves. If a guitar's not right, it doesn't leave the shop. So you've got to think about that kind of thing, where you're buying something from. But even if you're buying second hand or stuff like that, it's always worth checking how it is. But you've got to know what you're checking for and how to do the stuff. Mm-hmm. And with guitar, it's not hard. You've just got to put the time in. 9 times out of 10, something can be done with a screwdriver and an Allen key, and you're sorted. It's just, yes, you've got to kind of be careful with what you're doing. Make sure that you don't do anything that's not reversible. But yeah, just kind of do the research on how to set something up. Biggest things, or the easiest thing to check is probably the action of the strings. So just the string height from the fretboard. Getting that set right is going to completely change the feel of the guitar. And also changing the relief in the neck, so like the truss rod and all that kind of thing. That all makes a massive difference.
So would you recommend, above anything else, taking your guitar to a shop to get done, or doing the research and figure it out on your own, or both?
If you don't feel confident doing all that stuff, then take it to a shop. Because it's surprisingly, people kind of get a misconception that it is really easy to mess things up with your guitar. It's not. They can withstand a lot of kind of abuse, if you will, or kind of just If you don't feel confident with it, take it to a shop. If you do feel confident enough to kind of do it, there's plenty of online forums that will tell you what to do, or watch a YouTube video of Justin What's His Face setting something up. But yeah, it's something that you can do just as easy at home. rather than taking it out. If it's just a basic setup. If it's anything worse than that, like messing about with electronics and all that kind of stuff, or getting a neck brake repaired, 100% take it to a shop.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be sitting in your living room with a tub of super glue trying to put your headstock back on. It's not going to work.
Dude, I was actually in a rehearsal where that happened to somebody. It was an Epiphone actually, so it was like it was a Les Paul, and it's because of the way that the
kind of
headstock is all So basically, he had like leaned it against a chair, and then it had slid, and it must have just like that was the last straw for the guitar. It was just like, you know what, I'm done. Fell, and the whole the headstock just like boing, just came off.
Yeah,
and obviously like bounced because of the tension of the strings.
I'm going to say right now,
crazy.
Buy a damn stand for your guitar. Don't sit on the ground.
Yes. You get stands for like less than a tenner.
Yeah.
Don't use a chair.
Same goes for saxophonists. Do you remember that gig, Dario? We had about $8,000 or $12,000 worth of saxophone just lying on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It was like it was a soprano, a tenor, and an alto, maybe even a baritone, and they were all just sitting on the ground at a wedding, rather than on stands.
What? Oh, for goodness sake!
Like 100% buy a stand, because you get cheap ones, you get dear ones. I would probably buy a dear one, to be honest.
I've got a cheap one like right next to me, and it's fine. It's still here, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's fine for in the house anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going out anywhere, if they're in the house, like you can just see it.
Yeah.
Wherever my hand was there, I've got like a rack to hold all of them. But if not, you can see this one here. Yeah. It's basically a Hercules stand, which grabs the headstock of the guitar, and they're secure as hell. If you knock that over, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But if you're out gigging, or even if you're in the studio, anything like that, if the studio doesn't have a guitar stand, bring one. Every gig you go to, bring a guitar stand. You don't want to be leaning it against chairs or like lying on the ground or anything like that. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And that's where, like, say you don't have a backup guitar, your guitar could easily be out the game for 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do? So invest in a stand, and just get one that's decent.
Yeah, we were saying that having backup instruments, like it's less important for drums because it's so modular. If you break one bit of your drum kit, you can still play the drums. Like if a tom breaks, you just keep playing. It's fine. But if something goes on a guitar, or your guitar breaks, it's kind of out of order. That's it. It's kind of unplayable unless it's like one pickup selection. Maybe one pickup's gone. You can still maybe get by, but it's a lot more risky, and sometimes it's best having a two guitars, as in case one needs to get like permanent repair done on it.
Yeah.
Right.
That was my kind of rule. Not a rule for myself, but that's what my excuse for buying more guitars. Basically, you've always got one, because like I had a time where my acoustic was in the shop getting work done.
Yep.
And I think it must have been an Eriska gig or something like that. We had a gig coming up. I had to borrow another acoustic guitar. You don't want to really be in that position, because again, it goes back to what we were saying about kind of setup and feel and all that kind of stuff. Someone else's guitar isn't going to feel the same as yours. So having a backup's always good. Obviously, different circumstances, all that kind of stuff. But I would have. Two of everything.
Yeah. For me, it's like my backup is definitely, even though I use it all the time, it's the P bass. It's really good to have just a beater guitar. just lying about that, even if something were to happen to it, it's not the worst thing in the world,
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, it's replaceable.
Yeah, your backup guitar doesn't need to be like thousands of pounds. I've got a backup telly that cost me 120 quid.
And it's awesome.
If it's there, it gets you out of a pinch. And you can grab it. Like, yeah, it's a tough one because, again, with that kind of backup thing, you don't want to be taking 2 guitars to every gig.
No.
Because it's nonsense, especially depending on the kind of gig you're doing. If you're doing covers and all that kind of stuff, you want to be in and out of the place as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So taking as little there is great.
Right.
But yeah, recording sessions, I'd probably say take a couple, just to be on the safe side, unless you know 100% that your guitar's reliable.
So speaking of bringing less gear to gigs, that brings us on to amps and pedals and stuff. So what is your opinion on the likes of good old-fashioned valve amps and pedals and all that, or single systems like Kemper and Line 6 Helix and all that? What's your opinion on that?
It varies, to be honest. You're always going to get to the 2 camps, but for me it kind of blends in. There's applications for both. I've got tube amps. I think I've got 2. I've got a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, which is just a kind of standard. Used to, again, when venues and gigs were a thing, it's standard backline. So that is like the kind of base standard of what you want for an amp, essentially. It's all tube. Sounds great. It's not without its quirks, because obviously, again, with the same with guitars, you've got to maintain them. You've got to maintain tube amps. Again, make sure you're kind of looking after the tubes, because if one goes wrong, it goes wrong. And then, they're great kind of applications for that. I'd still take them to gigs and all that kind of stuff. Recording, you're going to get the sound that you're comfortable with and like your kind of amp sound, because it's all there. The digital thing is excellent. Again, like I say, I'm kind of I sit in both camps. I'm like on the fence with this stuff. I can take a digital thing. I can take a tube amp. It doesn't matter. But the digital stuff's great. Especially Kemper. You know yourself. You've got one in the studio. You stick a mic in front of a tube amp, and you can get the sound of that tube amp into the digital box. Saved forever, you know what I mean? So it's great in that sense. Again, different applications for different things. I'd say sitting in a studio tracking stuff on a Kemper is easier. You don't have any, there's little variances. Like a tube amp, again, the room affects it. How hot the tubes are, how hot the room is affects it. There's all kind of, do you call that environmental factors? That kind of thing that are going to affect the sound of that amp, but they're not going to affect the sound of that digital box.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? So I can sit in both camps. Your tube amp's traditionalist, plug in and go. It's got characteristics that I think are still kind of missing from the digital stuff just now. They're getting damn close to it, but there's still something about plugging a tube amp in, turning it up loud, and feeling the kind of pulse coming from the speaker. That's that's kind of what you want from it. But it's a tough one. I would, for kind of cover gigs and all that kind of stuff, bar gigs, weddings, I'd go digital. Like 100%, because again, like I said earlier, if you get into that venue, you want to be efficient, you want to set up quick, you want to be in and out quick. If you've got a digital thing that's pedal board sized or whatever,
right,
plug it in, put it front of house. That's it. There's no faffing with setting up an amp, setting up a full board, all this kind of stuff.
That's the thing.
And that kind of thing, like 100%.
If you're doing like touring and stuff, or you're even just doing weddings, the Kemper comes in a pedal board form, and if you're in any of your monitors, the only thing you need to bring is a guitar stand, a Kemper pedal board, a jack lead, some plectrums, and that's it. You don't even need a cab.
If you use plectrums.
Yeah, you don't even need a cab, because you can just take a line out of your Kemper pedal board, put it through to any of your monitor system, and you're done. So you can be effectively, you can be packed up and in the car in under 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's
the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Again, like tube amps, if you want to take care of them, you need to let them cool down after a gig.
Yeah.
So ideally, you don't want to be. Again, you want to turn that thing on standby, leave it for a good while before you're moving it, or else that just kind of takes the life out of the tubes. But yeah, that's right. Like for that kind of application, digital stuff. Sometimes you do just want to go traditional, plug in and play, and just get an amp and go for it. So it's a tough one to call. It really is. But yeah, I'd base it on two different things. Your tube amp's got different characteristics, and it's going to feel different because again, it's a feel thing. How it responds.
Yep.
Digital stuff does feel different, but it's getting, let's say, damn close. So it's definitely going to
depends
take
on the one you buy.
At one point.
There's some that offer sort of different types of digital. So even though Kemper is digital, what it does is it takes a snapshot of your amp or any amp. There's amps inside it already modelled, and you can get some online as well. People do amp packages. So what it does is it measures how your guitar amp distorts and how it deals with signal, and then mimics that in the box. So it's a profile, so that when you play your guitar through the Kemper, it does the same things to the signal as your guitar does. But Line 6 Helix is just it's an emulation of what the amp does, or what the amp sounds like. Meaning, if you'll know exactly, if you put your hot rod to the gain to 1, you know that it's gonna break up in certain ways. Maybe the lower frequencies sort of distort more, and then when you fire it up to 9, you know what the sound is. Or maybe sometimes in digital amps, if you turn the gain up to maybe 6 and you play lightly on the strings, on a digital amp, it'll still have that full distortion sound. But on a valve amp, if you play lightly, the distortion will back off a little bit because you're playing quieter, and the valve amp it breathes. You can get that with a Kemper. That's the beauty of a Kemper, because it's kind of modelling how a valve actually works. But I'm pretty sure the other digital pedal boards like Boss and all that, like, they don't quite get that. So if you're really gonna go down the digital route and you've got money to spare and you're doing loads of gigs and you can justify it, I would 100% recommend a Kemper. That's why I got it for the studios, because I only have a small studio and I don't have enough space or money to buy 10 different amps, 15 different amps. You go to some studios and it's just like a wall of amps. So I bought a Kemper because you get like 99% there with the sound of an amp, and you can get as many amps as you can fit on a hard drive, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. But I can see the argument if you're like, you want that cab behind you. But again, if you do have your Kemper, you can buy a 4x12 cab and hook it up and have it on stage with you, and I would probably not feel any different. But again, if you're starting out and you're deciding on either digital or not digital, it's a lot of money to lay down for a Kemper. But but you could buy like a solid state Black Star amp for 200 quid, and it would probably sound pretty decent to get you started. What are the kind of starter amps that you would recommend if you were maybe just starting to play in bands and stuff? What kind of size?
Yeah, Black Star's one of them. They've got a couple of decent solid state kind of modelling amps. I think it's the Black Star Silver line.
Yep.
And they look cool as well. They're not like your standard wee black box that you get that just has a speaker inside it. They're actually thought about, and it's got a nice design cab and all that kind of stuff. So you got that. Cheaper end of the budget, you got like Fender Mustang amps, which are still good. You get a decent amount of tweakability with them, kind of going between different sounds, adding in effects. It's a good basis to kind of start and find out what you want from it.
Yeah.
If you want to go down that route, if you want to just kind of plug in and play for enjoyment, then yeah, go for it. But yeah, stuff like that. Going up from there, you're probably talking into getting like, that's going into tube amp territory. So you've got stuff like the Black Star HT range.
Yeah.
Again, it's nice that you don't get the kind of effect, kind of modelling and all that kind of stuff on it, but it's just a tube amp to plug in and go.
Yeah.
Because that's where you want to go. If you want to go down the pedal route, it's like thinking about pedal platform amps and all that kind of stuff. Which again, it's another rabbit hole you can fall down. I think every guitarist does.
What's the pedals confuse me no end.
Right.
Pedals, like some people get this really nice amp, and it breaks up really nice, and it's got really nice distortion. I get this all the time, and that's a really nice amp. And then they put it clean, and then they get a drive pedal, and they drive everything from the pedals. So what happens is the breakup and distortion is coming from the pedal, and then they're just using the amplifier as a glorified speaker. So, and like as an engineer's perspective, I'll hear that and I'll hear the guitar coming through my monitors, and I'm like, all right, it's all right, I've heard better. And then I'll go through and I was like, can I bypass that distortion pedal and just use the grit on the amp? And like 90% of the time it sounds so much better. Why is it people do that?
It colours it a bit differently, and again, depends on application. If you can't get that amp to the point of a breakup,
right,
then the pedal's going to do it before then. But yeah, it's a different kind of colour, different sound that comes from it, because an amp's breakup is distinctive to the amp. Like if I was to again kind of put two of the well-known brands together, like Fender and Marshall.
Yeah.
A Marshall breakup, or kind of overdrive distortion, if you will, is a lot different to a Fender.
Yeah.
So, say you've got a Fender amp, but you want to try and get the Marshall style breakup, chuck a pedal in front of it.
Yeah.
And you get that kind of thing going.
So is it kind of like your amp is your mothership, that's your burger, that's your main bit, and the pedals are just the seasoning just to try and get it there to that tone you want?
Yeah.
Am I right?
That's quite a good analogy for it, yeah.
That works.
Okay.
It is just kind of getting different things on top of what you've got.
Right.
It depends on the pedal. I mean, it depends how they're set, all that kind of stuff as well. I currently usually go for like 2 drives at a time, because one is going to hit it and distort it.
Yep.
The other one's going to boost that distorted signal.
Right.
To boost it to a different gain stage, or you can set the kind of lower gain one, and have that kind of difference between. So you've got clean, light gain, heavy gain, all that kind of stuff happening.
Yeah.
And again, each of them hits the amp a bit different.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's a rabbit hole to fall down and kind of experiment with. But yeah, there's tons of different ones out there, especially drive pedals that you can get lost in, because they all have a different character to them. And then on the other boat, you've got all your different types of effects, like your modulations, delays, reverbs, all that kind of stuff. Which again is another thing. Depends what kind of sound palette you want to work from.
So I was going to ask as well, signal flow with regards to pedals. What would you say? Like, because a lot of people get this wrong. Like EQ before compression, before distortion, delay after, chorus after. Like, what is your typical route for pedals? Which comes before what and why?
So I've got my wah first.
Right.
If I use one.
So straight out of the guitar and into
a wah. Yeah, guitar, into a wah pedal, into a tuner.
Right.
And then into the drives.
Okay.
Then out of the drives into like kind of the modulation stuff. So like your chorus and then like delay, reverb.
Okay.
So you want it that way. It depends if you do want it that way, because your modulations to me would come last, because you want them to affect your overall sound.
Yeah.
So you don't want, if that comes first and then you put your drive second, you're overdriving the modulated sound.
Yeah.
Which it gives you a cool sound, but it sounds nasty. So it's like, do you want, if you started with your delay, you're coming out your guitar and going into a delay, that delay is getting a clean signal.
Yep.
And then it's coming out of the delay into an overdrive. You kick on that overdrive.
Yeah.
You're not overdriving your clean signal, you're overdriving the delay.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's that's why the order kind of, or to me, that order works. But
I saw on an Orange amp, it had a effects loop. So you plug into the amp, and there's also a connection at the back that you can connect external effects to. So what's that for? Can you connect your pedal board to the effects loop? How does that work?
So effects loop, I've never used it because I didn't see the benefit for me. But effects loops are there in my kind of experience for like your kind of modulations and again delays, reverbs,
right?
Because it'll bypass what's happening on the drive section of like the layout.
Okay.
So that's coming out differently. Your drives are hitting the kind of front of the amp.
Yeah.
And kind of driving that before it comes out of the speaker again.
Yeah.
Whereas with the effects loop, it's coming out of the speaker a bit differently. And kind of.
Does it take the clean?
Explain that.
Does it take see when you send the signal to the effects loop? Is it pre-distortion pedal or post-distortion pedal? Depends on how you wire it. Okay. So what's the point then? It doesn't make sense.
It's supposed to make it cleaner.
Okay.
So you can hear that effect coming out a bit cleaner. Again, my experience in it is nil, because I've never even bothered with it. I just have my pedal board and plug it straight into the amp. And go from there. So it's probably something for me to experiment with, but again, I know a lot of folk that use it for like if they're doing the kind of spacey sounds and want the nice lush reverbs and all that kind of stuff. Chuck that in the effects loop and it comes out cleaner, and you can define it a bit more.
So if you've got like a pedal board just going into the input of the amp, and maybe you've got an Axe Effects unit that's doing something totally different, you can wire that in the effects loop as an external thing. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I say my experience in that is not.
Yeah, no one ever uses it. It's weird. I see them on a lot of amps, but like hardly anyone does it. But I still see it as an option. And I was like, what is this? Who is this for? Yeah, it's bizarre, and it goes to show like a lot of people just don't know what the knobs and buttons and does on their amps a lot of the time.
Bass is even more so.
Yeah, they know the on
bass
and off
players
switch
just have
and volume.
No idea. On and off switch and bass. Let's turn that up.
Bass, yeah, I want all the bass. I'm playing bass, so I want bass.
Or you go down the DI box route and just let the sound engineer do it.
That's the correct way of doing it.
No.
Let me have full control of your sound. just going to reamp your crappy solid state amp anyway. Right, so we've covered pretty much. Is there anything I've missed, Julian?
Yeah, actually, in the bass guitar episode, I kind of lightly covered things like practicing and people to listen to. So we'll do a bit of that. So, what are kind of the most important things that you could practice on a guitar? Certainly, it goes without saying for bass, generally to just improve your bass playing, just because all bass playing is scales and arpeggios, or variations of whatever. So yeah, just fire away.
Get used to using your volume control on the guitar for when you make a mistake. Turn it down, mime, and you're sorted. Yeah, practice wise for me, it went kind of trying to hark back to when I started. It was mostly 90% of the time as a guitarist in any sort of kind of gig other than original music, you're probably going to be playing chords.
Yeah,
know your chords inside out, especially like the kind of your standard ones. If you want
your cowboy chords.
Yeah, get to grips with kind of inversions and all that kind of stuff, so that you can start adapting things in your own way. So you get like again, standard song like Sweet Home Alabama or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the song's got a maximum of 4 chords.
Yeah.
But know all the different ways you can play those 4 chords. So that you can make that your thing, and have some fun with it. So I'd practice that kind of idea. Practicing chords and all that kind of stuff, 100%. And then moving on to getting your scales down, kind of some improvising and all that kind of stuff. Because as soon as the scales come, then you can start pretending you're Slash, and do all the solos. But yeah, starting with that kind of thing.
Cool.
Probably starting like I started out myself, teaching myself, watching YouTube, all that kind of stuff. But getting a good teacher is probably a good starting point as well.
I didn't mention that in my episode, but yeah, 100% get a teacher if you don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a professional, you're still going to learn off someone. Because everyone's got something else to give. I mean, like, I know, like, being in rehearsals with you guys, I go to Julian, your chord knowledge, and all that kind of stuff. So, like, try to think of how to approach things differently, because everyone's got a different approach to it. So I could play guitar one way, but Jimmy, whatever his name is down the road, is going to play it differently and have a different approach. So we could both be playing the same thing, but he could say, "Oh, try this."
Yeah.
And it's a different idea.
It's like
for you.
that story where Paul McCartney and John Lennon, took a train across Liverpool to find a man who could play a B7 different than anyone else. Back before
exactly
YouTube.
What it is.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's exactly what it is. You want to get enough different ideas under your belt, and it's going to help you find how you play as well. Because again, you're going to take someone's idea and adapt it.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of music and the beauty of guitar playing. It's always just borrowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was saying as well. I suppose you'd probably agree with me. Is even if you're just playing in like a metalcore band or something, try and learn how to play as many different styles as possible, because you won't know what will you'll pick up something that you might not have picked up before.
Just imitate until you figure it out. Fake it until you make it. Just imitate what other people do, and then eventually it'll start to make sense in your own head.
Yeah. I mean, everyone goes through their style phases of what they listen to and stuff like that. I mean, I used to play a lot of like Metallica and Iron Maiden and all that nonsense. But again, that's added something to my playing that wouldn't have been there if I didn't bother.
Yep.
And the same with like, you know, guys. Again, this will tap into who to listen to. Guys for me like. Eric Johnson and Joe Bonamassa, they kind of interlink a little bit, but they take like standard blues stuff and flip it on its head, and just do their thing with it. Listening to that kind of stuff is going to open up a lot of different ideas, because it's not just like everyone thinks blues. You got to stick to the blues scale and the pentatonics and all that kind of stuff. Listen to these guys, and you're going to change your mind. So go on to folk to listen to. If I could narrow it down, like, give me a limit of folk to listen to.
Well, I had hunters. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 bass players.
Okay.
But you don't have to do that many.
I'll start from the top. So I've already mentioned to Joe Bonamassa, Eric Johnson. They're kind of big guitar names. You're, again, to cover all bases, you're gonna have to learn stuff from Kirk Hammett, Metallica. Unfortunately, but he's there. He does some things that nobody else does. There's kind of I say under the radar folk. But people like Guthrie Trapp and Alan Hines, they're two folk that
don't know those names.
I don't think folk will, unless you're in the guitar world. But listen to them. Guthrie Trapp's that session guy in Nashville. Absolutely unbelievable player. Just that's the only way to describe it. He does a lot of stuff. He's kind of not just country based. He's got an album called, what's it called?
Cumbernauld.
I think it's Life After Dark. Yeah, Life After Dark. If you listen to that is like every style of music imaginable on one album. And he plays guitar on it all, and it's kind of arranged it all and all that kind of stuff. It's incredible. Alan Hines is the other one. He does a lot of kind of instrumental stuff, but again has been sideman for a lot of folk. His playing style is really unique, I'd say. Kind of harks into like legato runs and all that kind of stuff. It's a really cool kind of cool sound to tap into. Guthrie Trapp, Alan Hines. You've got your Instagram folk as well. Again, they've made a killing on that platform, but where I found them out was there. They could have been doing whatever else, but there's guys like Matthias Asato. He does a lot of kind of almost neo-soul based stuff, but again, a lot of other things in there as well. It's just, he's an insane player. Who else? The old guard, for me, like Clapton. Clapton, the guitar world will shoot me for saying this, but you will learn a hell of a lot more from Clapton than you ever will from Hendrix. Shots fired. Hendrix is he's the guy for guitar, but Clapton was better, or is better rather. Clapton's still here. But yeah, Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Again, he's more like kind of Texas blues, but again, if you can't learn something from him, I'd be shocked.
But
yeah, last three, I would say. all interlink again. So you've got Eric Gales, again, incredible player. The interesting thing about him is that he's left-handed, but plays with right-handed string, a right-handed guitar just flipped. So his strings are all upside down to him, essentially. So you watch his playing, it's totally insane. But again, he's an incredible player.
Another you have totally different chord shapes and things.
Oh yeah. You just do yourself a favour. There's a video of him, Matt Schofield, and Tomo Fujita on YouTube.
Oh yeah, Tomo's awesome. Yeah,
playing Little Wing. Again, Hendrix, but 100 times better. Go and listen to that, and you'll know exactly what I mean.
Right.
But yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
There was a couple that I had thought of there, just because I watch a lot of musicians on YouTube, and one of my favourite guitarists, mostly it's just his personality, because I think he's such a chill dude. Paul Davids.
Yeah.
He's a Dutch guy, but he does a lot of interesting little videos, and he covers electric and acoustic, and it does basically a bit of both. So
he's got the YouTube thing down. Between him and Marty
his videos
Schwartz.
look beautiful.
So, how many was that? How many was that? 8, 9, 10?
I didn't count.
It was enough.
I didn't count. It was enough.
It was enough. Cool. So that pretty much wraps up. Unless there's anything else you want to cover.
No, I think that was
pretty meaty episodes. Cool. So that wraps up the guitar episode. Thanks, Dario, for coming on and doing that. That's
very welcome.
Helped us out a lot because we don't really know the full in-depth guitar world.
No.
Next week we will be doing part 4, which is keyboards, the keyboard world and all that, which we've already recorded them backwards.
Yeah, it feels really weird saying that. It's like, what?
So yeah, if there's keyboardists out there, stay tuned for that. Yeah, hope you'll enjoy that. And if people want to, if they're local to Glasgow and they want to browse guitars or amps, where would you recommend Dario Palazzo?
Oh, I'd be quite inclined to recommend Merchant City Music.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
down near the Trongate. But yeah, right. Class wee independent shop where you're going to find the kind of main brands you want, but again a couple of quirky brands that aren't as well stocked as other places, but people need to latch onto them. Particularly those guys sitting next to me, Reverend guitars.
You're really like once things get back to normal, I think I might go
move into the shop.
Merchant City Music. Yeah, just live in the shop.
Yeah, I would recommend trying them to anyone because they've 100% changed my opinion on guitars. So
there you go.
Merchant City Music, Reverend guitars, and more.
And more.
And more. And other brands.
Cool. So thanks again for doing this. And if you like what you're listening to, please give us a wee like, share, subscribe, all the subscribes, all the reviews, all the ratings. Tell all your pals. Just do all the things that I tell you to do every week. And if you're liking this series and you want to see different instruments covered, please send us requests. If you want euphonium covered, we'll do that. No problem. We'll get a euphonium player in.
We'll find a euphonium player.
Oh yeah, easy. I know loads of euphonium players.
Yeah.
If you're into that sort of thing. Any suggestions?
Not, Julian will learn it.
Oh yeah, Julian he can learn anything.
Yeah, probably.
You can play any instruments.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
So if you've got any requests at all, feel free to come and ask us. We also have a website, www.levelupurband.com, and we are doing free downloads, PDF downloads of different things that we cover in the podcast. One being the one that's up just now is the gear list. It's our recommendations for affordable gear, which you can download for free on the website. We'll be updating that as time goes on. We're going to update it with some guitar stuff as well. And we've got other lists coming out as well in the future, so stay tuned. But I think that's all I've got to say, and hope you're all having a good week, and we'll see you next week for part 4. Bye.
Right, bye.
Bye.